Welcome to another video here on the Critical Focus channel. Before we get started, I would like to thank all my wonderful members that support my work. Every penny goes straight into new minis, new paint, equipment and whatnot. Your support means a lot. If you are not yet a member, what you can expect from a future membership is access to the member Discord, early access to videos, member deck review, and just generally a greater influence on the content I put out. I will surely add more features to the member side of things as I progress as well. Furthermore, I would also like to mention that if you are looking to buy Warhammer merch, you can now support the channel via clicking the link provided in the description of the video to help the channel with a small but valuable kickback without any extra cost for you by making any of your purchases via the link. Lastly, don't forget to like the video. A small click for you that still means a lot for me and the elusive YouTube algorithm to get the video into a more favorable position amongst the very steep competition out there on the YouTubes. And do feel free to comment as well. I'm always interested in hearing what you have to say. Any engagement is welcome really, and I always strive to answer any comment I do get. Alright guys and girls, welcome to another update here on the Critical Focus channel, filled to the brim with new information about Warhammer Underworlds 2.0, and these are not from a Warcom article this time, but rather from the live stream that aired on Friday the 11th. And I'll just simply read them as they appear in the video so that you won't have to watch the full 2-hour stream to get up to speed on what's what, and maybe as a veteran player, at least I can straighten out some of the things we see as well. So let's go. So the pre-game order has changed. Before we roll for boards, we now draw cards. The mulligan still seems to appear and be a thing. The roll-off itself has also changed down to being only 1 dice instead of 4 dice each. And the order of significance is changed as well, with crits being kings still, but then we count swords and then hammers and then supports, while beforehand supports were next to the crits in order. And the underdog will break ties in any roll-offs, but of course at the start of the game there is no underdog. Token placement. The first token must be placed in a neutral territory. I'm not sure neutral territory is a new term for no man's land, or if they just erroneously call it that in the stream, it doesn't really matter. And at least 1 token must be placed in each of the players' territories as well. Otherwise, the same restrictions to placing tokens apply, at least 2 hexes apart from each other, and only in checks if you can't place it anywhere else. No roll-off for fighter placement. Instead, the player who placed the last objective places the first fighter, and on that point, they are no longer called objective tokens, but rather treasure tokens. I don't really see the point of that change, but okay, it's not a big issue. Generally, fighters have more health than previously, and they are called health now, not wounds. We see the storm cost clocking in at 5 wounds apiece, and some non-leader Skaven sporting 4 health, which is indeed quite tanky without the general damage output going up, so there will be less one-shottable fighters in this edition, as a rule of thumb. Don't really mind this, honestly. While offsetting and longboarding is gone, the overall survivability then will be higher to not make aggro too strong a game plan. There is no longer an innate crit for finishing deploying first. I love this, actually. I never saw the point of having an advantage with less bodies on your team, basically. The player losing the initiative rolls also gets to draw an extra power card, regardless if the winning player lets the other player start or not. I think this is a nice little offset to tone down the randomness of the dice, especially during a best of 1 game. Delving is still around, but a fighter can have a guard token and a stagger token at the same time now, so you don't simply flip over the same token. Confirmed also is that underdog is not determined at the start of a round, but is a fluctuating thing. It can shift, and basically then as soon as another player has a higher glory tally, the underdog will shift. Nemesis is still a thing, but no further details revealed on how it will look. It was just teased that it actually still do exist. Stand fast can't reduce damage down to 0, in contrast to what I might have said in the previous video, because the previous graphics we had access to shown on Warcom seemed to make it out so it could actually, as it didn't have any clarification that it couldn't be reduced lower than 1. So, but now we know that we can't reduce it down to 0, unless other rules will override it, obviously. Trapped fighters might be a thing of the past as well, as it hasn't, quote, come up in any of their practice games so far, as they said here. And the streamers also couldn't find it in the book, so that might be gone. I don't feel very strongly about it, really. There is another huge change, which I talked about in the previous video. No spent or unspent glory anymore. Simply make sure that the active upgrades you have in play costs equal or less than the glory you have. When a fighter is killed, that upgrade is discarded and does no longer count towards the total glory needed. This also then means that objectives scoring off of a fighter with a certain amount of upgrades being out of action no longer is a thing, I guess. Well, it might be as a search, but not as an end phase card. But that's just a little caveat there. We also get some insight on Great Fortitude and Great Strength being 2 glory cost upgrades now, which is, I think, a good one, as they were and will probably still be very strong staples. And with the glory cost being a less impactful thing, I still think they will be very strong staples. Order is kept in the power phase, with the active player going first. Hints to other rival decks outside the core box with, quote, when you buy a new rival deck, you will know what playstyle it falls into, basically than aggro, control, mastery, etc. And therefore if it fits your warband or not. Cleave still is in the game as well, and still works the same, and Snare also works the same. Brutal is a new one that denies support in the defense row, quite a fun one. Also, single support is now called Flank, and double support is called Surrounded. This is a bit like the Emperor's New Cloak. I don't really see the point of these changes, but okay, I guess. Grapple is also a new one that lets you push in any direction instead of a regular drive back in the drive back step. Could be quite handy. Unclear if knockback is still a thing, as it didn't come up in this game. Grievous is also still a thing, but how it works differs quite a lot. Grievous as an effect without the crit symbol is straight up flat +1 damage, without any crit needed, while crit Grievous is a rider basically that triggers on a critical hit. Also a crucial change here is that weapon effect stacking isn't a thing anymore. If you have more than one effect of your attack, you can only use one weapon rule, unless otherwise stated, at any given time, which also then must be declared before your attack. So for example, if you have Grievous and Cleave, that's Grievous without the crit symbol, you can only use one of those effects and it must be declared before rolling. This might lead to some crucial decisions in game. So for example, if you're going to attack a fighter with 1 wound remaining, basically a vulnerable fighter then, with a 2 damage attack with Grievous and Cleave, it might be a good idea to simply go for the Cleave and not Grievous, as the stand fast rule, that is when the defender rolls more crits than you, that won't help the fighter survive, but the effect of the Cleave might help you, while in other circumstances the opposite might be true. I'm actually a fan of the effect stacking being done with, as it kind of leads to these interesting decisions, and could also easily get out of hand previously in especially like Voltron type warbands. No lethal hexes on the boards in the Embergard boxes, although confusingly enough the stagger hexes on the board seems to look like the old lethal hexes with a solid red border. I'm not sure why they made it so, but anyway. Attacks are now categorized as ranged or melee. I quite like this one. They still have specific ranges, mind you, so that's not gone away with, but rather than cards affecting a certain attack range, we will see cards affecting melee or ranged attacks going forward. I quite like this, as we previously had cards affecting range 1 only, we had cards affecting range 1 and 2, we had cards affecting range 3, we had cards affecting range 3 plus, etc. Especially cards affecting specifically range 1 only were often mistakenly in the rush of things to affect range 2 as well. So I'm quite happy with this one being a thing now. The rules for having all fighters outcharged hasn't changed. You still can't charge with such a fighter, but you can move, attack, go on guard, etc. Some end of game changes. The tie breaks in the case of a draw has changed slightly. First off, if only one player has surviving fighters, that players win, and that was the same thing before, basically. Secondly, the combined value of held tokens break the tie. I'm not sure the beast keyword is still a thing, as they previously couldn't hold objectives, and if or not they could hold objectives now, I don't know. Thirdly, the combined bounty of friendly surviving fighters break the tie. Some other stuff I picked up on. You can discard 0 cards with the new focus core ability and simply draw the extra power card if you don't want to discard any cards, pretty much making it the same as the old card draw action. The 2 decks displayed in the stream were aggro and hold. The third one, called Pillage and Plunder, is all about delving and delving back as well. The last mastery one, quote, changes how the game is played, and is also all about getting cataclysm points, so it seems to evolve around some sort of side game thing like seen in Daring Delvers with the exploration counters there. Here we see the fuse burning away, and it will burn away as fighters die or feature tokens are being unheld by the opponent's team. So I think that deck could be a lot of fun for like high skill expression type players. Even if decks now may not have plot cards, you still need to reveal what decks you are playing as part of the Warband reveal step before the game. So less guessing there and less of a shock value in your deck. Glory ceiling for the aggro deck we had revealed as well is 16, and the same goes for the whole deck. I suspect it might be the same for all of these decks. Let's also look into some of the cards that appear during the game and what warbands appear on the photos on these cards, because that might give us a hint on what warbands will be re-released, etc. First up is Shield Up with Morgoth's Crushers and Canaan's Reapers with a rather bland guard token effect. Next up is a search objective for making an attack on a fighter in enemy territory. I am really not a fan of such a low effort search card. Anyway, we see the 2 Embergard warbands in the photo here. Next up is Shoulder Throw with my man Mollog in the photo with a reaction, although there are no reactions per se anymore, to making a successful attack against an adjacent target. You then get to place them in another hex adjacent to the attacker. Basically you can chuck them in a stagger hex to buff later attacks or whatever. A commanding Stride is back with push the leader 3 hexes to end up on a starting hex. And this is a good opportunity to talk about the elephant in the room. I've said many times before that I'm not a fan of the essential card pack. I think a lot of those cards are pretty boring and should have stayed buried in Shadespire. Now we instead have to buy them a third time basically, but with no beautiful art anymore. And I can't help feel that's a bit lazy, and cards that don't really express any skill but rather just luck of the dice, like Branching Fate that we will see shortly, should in my opinion have stayed buried in the rabble after the Necroquake. That being said, some of these cards have changed slightly but are to a large extent the same, but let's move on. More old reprints. Sidestep with Tefk from the Chosen Axis here. I hope their War Scroll will be amazing if they come back. My second warband that I bought and hold very close to my heart. Illusory Fighter with Bridget Axwold from Hexbane's Hunter here. Remove them from play and place them in a sorting hex in your territory. Kind of a neat card. I think it's also a reprint, but I think the effect has changed slightly. Next one is Perfect Strike with only successes. Really low effort card as well with something like 2 hammers attack. I'm not a fan of these like luck of the dice cards, but yeah, let's stop beating the dead horse, I guess. Sharpened points for Cleave here. Not very exciting, but love to see Grundon and my favorite warband, the Gutsworn Hunt. Determined Effort is also back with the additional effect that you get 2+ dice if you are the underdog. I don't really mind that. Cunning Crew and Thunderix are featured here as well. Good spread of warbands on the card so far. Branching Fate, I'm not a fan, and even easier if you're the underdog. Really silly easy on 2 dice. Ephelim is represented here on the photo. By the numbers means draw cards equal to the number of treasure tokens held, with Velemorn in the card art. Hope to see them buffed if they come back. Card draw is always very solid. Another reprint here with Duelist, previously called Duelist Speed, I think. And the Stab Lads battling it out here with the new rats in the photo. Then we get to see the new Denial with the Godsworn leader here. But Denial is no longer a 3rd end phase for 2 glory, but rather any end phase for 1 glory. Fairly solid card. Keep Shopping is a 1 glory end phase for making 3 attacks in a battleground. Dirt easy, but not very exciting either. Godsworn Hunt and Velemorn in the picture here with Shond shopping away. One of the best models in Underworlds in my opinion, Shond. Very Conan Barbarian-esque. The extra mile is a reactionary 1-hex push onto a feature token after you have moved. So it also works on a charge because a move is part of a shot. Amos represented here. A solid card to help slow hold warbands get onto tokens, not least. Settle In is another guard token for free, but only works on a feature token. Kretsch in the card art here. And then we see another sidestep, this time with the Arena and the Soul Raid in the picture, so a good time to mention that certain staple cards like Sidestep and Great Strength, Fortitude, etc. are represented in more than one deck. I'm not sure I'm crazy about that. Then we see Great Speed, which is one of the most boring cards in the game. And interestingly enough, we also see here that it costs no glory. Good thing that, because I never, ever considered for it to take up space in any of my build decks. There are some more duplicates that appear, but I won't mention them unless we see new warbands in the photos. Next up is Step by Step with a fighter from the Gnarlspirit pack, which I can't recall the name of right now, and I can't be bothered to look it up. A search scored after an opponent's attack if you have a fighter with a move token holding in a treasure token in enemy territory. If you are the underdog, you can score it while having a charge token on such a fighter. Seems very easy, especially on a Horde warband. Hold the Line is next for no drawback on friendly fights in the next activation. Sorry, action step. With the Grimwatch in the photo here. Next up is Kanan on the photo of Unassailable, a search scored for still holding a treasure token after suffering an attack. Then we see the Bomb Rat on the pick on a 2 glory upgrade called Agile for a rerolled save dice. A single reroll for 2 glory seems pretty expensive in my opinion, but I guess now that crits aren't as mighty in the attacks as previously, it might prove worth it, I guess. Another rather plain staple, Strong Start, is back for killing the first fighter in a round with Kanan in the photo here. Careful Advance is a search Haskell in the photo here for having 2 fighters with move tokens in enemy territory. Pretty darn easy. Yagathra is charging in next on Wings of War with a +2 move ploy. Works on charge as well. Then we see a heavily revamped Supremacy with requiring at least 2 fighters with a combined bounty of 3 to hold treasure tokens. Seems pretty easy to do, honestly, especially for 3 glory, which generally should require a way harder condition than this in my opinion. Annihilation is back and unchanged with a wielder here. Nah, I will probably pass on Annihilation still, especially now that fighters are way harder to kill. And Warband as a whole, even more so. Tough, and Gorehulk fits the bill perfectly for such a card. With this 2 glory upgrade giving you the ability to ignore damage beyond 3 inside the same turn. That is an activation, basically. I guess that's an activation plus a power step. Apart from the Gorehulk, we also see one of the fighters from Serenis in this photo. That's a pretty strong upgrade. Next one is Great Fortitude for 2 glory, as we hinted at before, with the out of marriage son of Velmorn in the photo here. Also, it's not +1 wound, it's +1 health, to go with the updated language in AOS 4. Brawler is next with Manok being flanked by the fighters from the Shadeborn. The effect is that the fighters can't be flanked or surrounded, so attackers can't benefit from single or double support for your old timers out there. Next is Healing Potion with Snurk Sauertang here, getting healed or double healed if you are the underdog, if you roll a shield or crit. It doesn't say heal 1 or 2, it just says healed, so I guess heal is universally now just 1, I guess. Revamped effect, of course, from the old. But yeah, I'm okay with that one. Aggressive Defender is a search from attacking while holding a treasure token. Very, very basic condition, really. Quite Pock here blasting away while the Stab Lads are on the receiving end of his grenade crossbow. Poor Orcs in Orktober. Inviolate is an upgrade that makes you immune to being flanked or surrounded while holding a treasure token. So keep in mind you lose the effect if you delve and make it simply a feature token. Twister Knife is Grievous. This is also an old reprint. So this is +1 damage in the declare action step. Do note that this doesn't trigger on a crit like the old Grievous, but it's rather just a passive buff that's now not dependent on the dice result. But you still need to land the attack, of course. Brute Momentum is Morgok again, with being able to deny a drive back while having a charge token. Do note for any newcomers that the fighters I mentioned here does not have anything with the effect of the cards. I'm just mentioning because it might hint what warbands will like be re-released first or whatever. Then we see another healing potion, this time with my main man Vasilek and his elegant waistline. Stubborn to the Bone is immunity to Overrun, with the Stalag Squig here being stubborn or just stuck, I guess. Overrun is something mentioned in my last video. Overrun is a new effect that you can trigger if you have more crits in the attack roll and than in the defense roll to, after the drawback step, push onto the hex that the defender was occupying. but this card then denies. Strike the Head is a search Grim Watch here again, for killing the leader on or a fighter with more health than the attacker. Fields of Blood is an end phase for 1 glory, Prince Duval, representing here for 4 or more fighters being damaged or slain. Friend and foe, mind you, so dirt easy and very good for something like glass cannon aggro warbands. Switch things up is a switcheroo of 2 treasure tokens. It specifically says treasure tokens though, so you can't swap a delved token that's just a feature token now. As part of this, Sorbag looking sexy here. Next up, we see Kagra and the Chosen Axes on the photo of Lure of Battle. A ploy, pretty much a washed-down version of Center of Attention here, with pushing an enemy fighter within 2 hexes of a friendly fighter, 1 step closer to that friendly fighter. Iron Grasp is a 2 glory end phase for holding all treasure tokens in friendly and or enemy territory. That's pretty strong with at least 1 token in no man's land, and delving still being a thing. Then we see Onslain from Iltharis Guardians on the cover of Critical Effort, which simply means roll a crit in an attack. You don't need to succeed to score it. I'm really not a fan of these low effort luck of the dice objectives. Sorry, I have to mention it again. On the edge sees the Loon Court surrounding the poor Alenson, the assassin from the Thunderix Profiteers, and it's an end phase 1 glory objective for an enemy fighter being vulnerable. Yeah, okay. Go All Out is an end phase. Morgok and the Reapers here in the photo scored for 5 or more fighters having move and or charge tokens. Pretty solid in the first or second round for any larger warbands, as enemies and friendlies do count towards this. Will be a bit harder when everything is dead in the third end phase. Then we have a couple of plain cards without no fighters in the photo. They are hole 1 or 2 and hole 3 or 4. Not really exciting, is it? And that does indeed conclude all the new information. And while I talk here in the closing sections of the video, I'll let some of the fighter cards float around here to squeeze in as much new information as humanly possible. I will also mention that even if I don't seem very excited about some of the reprinted cards, that doesn't mean I won't enjoy playing the game. It might play very fun. So, but I'm just not fond of like the photos being a thing instead of the wonderful card art we had previously, and I'm not really a fan of, as I said, these low effort search cards. But yeah, I'm not calling final judgment on anything as of yet. Do leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more news of Warhammer Underworlds Embergard. More Batreps will be featured shortly for Underworlds, Warcry, Age of Sigmar, Spearhead, whatever, and lore videos for all of that stuff as well, and whatnot. So yeah, coming to you very soon, I'm sure. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned.